The Statue of Liberty faces outward towards the nations, holding aloft the torch of freedom, the flame of hope, the promise of the future. She holds this torch high in the daytime and during the night as well. She shines her light in the midst of darkness. Liberty's image is one of strength, majesty, and hope, visible in her eternally raised right arm, which carries the torch of freedom. Holding aloft a light that never fails, she represents hope to the hopeless, welcome to the poor, courage to the meek. Facing outward towards the ocean, her lamp is a beacon on stormy seas, drawing to her shores those from afar who seek a better life. For these and for countless others who embrace her message, the Statue of Liberty represents the golden door. What is the golden door? It is the entrance into liberty and freedom. The statue welcomes all to this door, the lost, the needy, the rejected, the exiled. She invites them to step through into freedom. Liberty's comforting presence is increasingly needed when the sea of world events becomes more stormy and the waves higher. In times of turbulence, her light is reassuring, her presence a guarantor of safety. Enlightening the world, and this is truly her task, to enlighten mankind to the noble ideals of freedom and equality that belong to each one, and to hold high the standard of hope, that light will always triumph over darkness. This is the promise represented in the statue, that through every conflict, war, or loss, through every disposition or abandonment of principle, the torch of freedom will continue to be held high. So I found this on lightomega.org. In my meditation this morning, suddenly the Statue of Liberty came to mind. And I wasn't quite sure why, because what I thought about speaking this morning was about some of the trials I know some of you are going through. And we have quite a few of our family who are dealing with major life transitions and are really dealing with some tough times. You know, when the weeds get tall and we're trying to navigate through. And so in my meditation time, when the Statue of Liberty came up, I thought, what has this got to do with anything? And then I realized that in my days before unity, I felt like the huddled masses yearning to breathe free. You know, the quote that's on the Statue of Liberty. You know, I felt like one of those people kind of dragging in, looking for a better life, a different kind of existence than the one I had. And it was an existence, you know, just surviving, not thriving, kind of hanging on and looking for something better, kind of looking for the light, whatever that light was, and I didn't quite know what it was. And so I read this piece, because I immediately went to Google and looked up the Statue of Liberty message, and I found this on lightomega.org. And I thought, how perfect for what unity principles did for me, and I did for myself with those principles. Because I think unity principles, this principle that divinity, that we are the divinity, we are that presence, that we are strength and light and goodness, was something I was not familiar with. And so when I heard that message, it flipped the switch for me. And yes, after I learned how to live those principles, I found freedom. And I think that's what unity offers, is an opportunity, like this country offers an opportunity, not a guarantee of happiness. It's just an entrance to something better. But if you don't step through the door and live the freedom and live the principles, it doesn't happen. And so, what occurs when we're deep in the weeds is we have to still connect with that light beyond the door. And it's hard when you're in the weeds. Because the weeds are here, and they're blocking you from the light. And sometimes you just want to pull the weeds around you, right? Heck with the light. Because we want the light to do for us. We want something to come save us. We want something to chop the weeds away and just make the path clear. I wish it were so. You know, so just like the Statue of Liberty stands up on the shores of New York with her torch high in darkness and in light, so is the presence of God shining the light for us. But we've got to walk through the door and enter the light. And not really enter it, because we got to remember, with our philosophy of metaphysics, we are the light, but we forget when the weeds are all over us, slapping us in the face, lashing against our arms and legs, and the stuff gets deep, right? It's hard to think that you are healing presence when you're sick. Sick as a dog. When I had pneumonia, I could barely turn over in bed, let alone flip a switch and get my consciousness to remind me that I was the healing presence. The fact that I was healing presence never occurred to me at some of those times when I was laying in bed, moaning and having a hard time, and I'm in pain. And I just want to pull the covers over me and forget it. And you know what? When we're dealing with our stuff, sometimes you just need to pull the covers over your head and forget it. Really, sometimes you just need to be in your stuff. You need to be in whatever you're dealing with. Sometimes you just need to have the weeds and look at them. Sometimes you have to be able to push them back and let them come back and slap you in the face again. Sometimes that's what life is. But it's okay, because the torch is still held high. The light is still there. The presence is still there, and we get to return to it when we're ready to step through the door. You know, sometimes we're in pain. You know, I've talked often about that time when my mother had her strokes and I was navigating that time with her. There were moments that were just terrible. And I would sit and cry. And there were times when I had my tantrum about, I don't want to do this. I don't want this. I don't want her laying in that bed. I don't want the pain of having to watch her drift away. I don't want it, I don't want it, I don't want it. But it was what it was, right? And life just is. And so we don't get to choose the circumstances. We get just to choose how we show up for it, and with it, and in it. But the promise of freedom is always there. And when we're ready, we get to open our eyes and either step towards it, look at it, call it in, and either chop down the weeds, if that's what we need to do, and clear our space, or just walk away from them. life gets tough, and we get presented with things that we just don't want. And we think we're not going to be able to handle it. We think we're not going to survive it. We wonder, how much longer do I have to be in this? How much longer? And there's never an answer, right? Nothing ever says, no, you're going to have 5 more weeks, 6 more weeks, 10 more days, 10 more hours, 1 more hour. It's never there. As much as we want the answer, and as many times as we ask it, at least I've never gotten the answer. Right? And so we're just left with it. And so I think our challenge, one thing we can do is first remember that the light is still raised. The light's still there. And so hold on to the light in the harbor that's calling you in through the fog, through the weeds. That the door is still open. The door to freedom. And it doesn't guarantee that you're going to feel better, but it guarantees that you have a choice to feel better. I wish it were easier. I do, and I wish I could make it easier for all of you. There are times when I hear what you're going through, and I wish I could take it from you. I haven't developed that superpower yet. I'll let you know if I do. But I don't know. I think that's maybe our path, is to figure out what to do with the weeds when they crop up, when they start to grow. So another tool I found was that, when things are good, or we judge them good because the weeds don't seem as high, or we found our way through them a little bit, that's when you continue and deepen your practice. Because it's easier when the weeds are not so high, and when it's not so dark, and when there's not as much fog around you, crowding your vision of the light. But when things are good, is when we become complacent. Oh, I don't have to meditate. I don't have a problem to solve. There was talking about, people, we generally don't pray until something bad happens. We have some kind of crisis. But if we pray all the time, in the times we judge as good, then in the times we judge as bad, prayer is easier. You've got a firmer foundation, a more solid, bigger, wider, stronger foundation, and it's easier to see the light if you're looking at the light all the time. So it behooves us to practice all the time. Statue of Liberty. The torch is there in darkness and at night, in the daylight. It's not as easy to see the light in the light, because it's all the same thing. So you have to practice harder. I remember years ago when I was teaching exercise, and I would be in the gym, and people would say, "Why are you here? You don't have to come anymore. You don't have to exercise. You're already in shape." But I think it's harder to work on staying in shape when you're in shape. Because you don't think you have to. You think it's okay to take a day off. You become complacent. Well, I can eat whatever I want. I can go off on my healthy diet because I'm already in shape. But it takes more discipline to be in shape when you're in shape. It takes more discipline to meditate When it feels like life is going your way. Because you feel like, I don't have to. Life is good. I'm great. I don't need God right now. Right? I don't need anything right now. Why do I have to meditate? But it's that discipline that helps you build that foundation, that helps stoke that flame, the torch that we have to look for when times get rough. That's when you're shoveling that coal onto that fire, adding the fuel to the fire, the wood, the things that keep that light burning brightly for you. And then when the stuff gets deep and dark, the light is bright and shining before you. We never know what's coming down the pike. I was just listening in the car on the way here. Sting is one of my favorite vocalists. And his song, Fragile. And one of the lines is, on and on, the tears will fall like rain from a star. On and on, the tears will fall. And sometimes it feels like that's what's happening, doesn't it? Like the tears keep falling. And it just rains and rains and rains, and you're drowning. Right? And you feel how fragile you are in that moment. Like you're going to break apart. That you just need that straw that breaks the camel's back. And you're wondering, where is that straw? You know, I kind of grew up in a consciousness where it was always waiting for the other shoe to drop. Don't get comfortable if it's good, because there's something frightening right around the corner. Right? That's the kind of consciousness I grew up in. And so when I got to Unity and I realized that there's goodness and light all the time, then I felt free. There is no other foot. There is no rain. There are no tears dropping on us all the time. I mean, it feels like it, but that's how we judge it. We're at choice again to say, these are my circumstances, and I'm going to see the light. And I'm going to try to be the light today. Or I'm going to go find the light in someone who is my family, whether it's your family of origin by birth, the family here in this community. Sometimes we have to reach out so somebody else can take you to the light. Each of you bring me to the light. And we can be that for each other. So sometimes when your life is feeling like it's going really well, sometimes it's time for you to show up to hold the torch for someone else. And it's not always about doing something. Sometimes your presence alone does that. So as a community here together, we need to hold the torch for each other. So there may be days where you feel like, oh, maybe I don't need church. But you may be church for somebody who's just holding on. You may be the light they need. The hug you give them when they walk through the door might be exactly what they needed. Sometimes the call is to just show up because you're the light. You're the hope of freedom. People get to watch us when we're in our strength and we are seeing the light. Sometimes we can only see the light through others. So we get to be the torch sometimes. And we actually are the torch all the time. It's just hard to feel it and know it and embrace it and do something with it when we're in the weeds. When life seems to be threatening to take us over and cut us at the knees, cut us down at the knees, right? Life happens. Sometimes it happens for a long time. Sometimes we want to call it quits. Yeah? But that's the time when it's time to find your foundation again, find your footing, look for the light. Remember you are the light. Or perhaps that somebody else can be the light for you. I see that happening here in this community. People reaching out to each other. People wanting more connection with each other. People holding on to each other when they hug. I don't know that I ever got the church hug here where you just kind of, lean in and then you're gone. I think from the first day I came here, even as a speaker last year, I always got a real hug. Where people felt me and saw me. When I spoke, they heard me. That's special. Each of you is someone special. And so we get to be the light for others and for ourselves. And I'm so grateful that you watch each other and you ask after each other and we're taking care of each other. It doesn't happen everywhere. It doesn't. So remember, there's freedom at the door. Freedom, like we have freedom in this country. There's freedom mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually at the light. Keep your eye on the torch. Let's take this in a meditation.